Right, today we're going to talk about consumer and producer surplus. Consumer surplus, first of all, is the difference between the price the consumer is willing to pay, what they're prepared to pay, and the market price. For example, if maybe I want a car and I'm prepared, my maximum is 40,000. I don't want to spend more than 40,000. I go and look for a car and I find a car for 30,000. So there, I've saved 10,000. That would be my consumer surplus. Obviously, we're talking about markets here, and we're talking about all the consumers together. Here's the price, but all the consumers are prepared to pay more. Some consumers are prepared to pay more before the consensus where the equilibrium point is found. We can see here there's a consumer surplus, so it's above the price and below the demand curve. That's considered the consumer surplus, which is considered a welfare, a benefit of the consumer. If the price goes up, obviously the consumer surplus will go down. Or if the price goes down, the consumer surplus will go up. We can see that here, this triangle is getting smaller and bigger according to the price where it's moving. Now, if it's a very inelastic demand, so it doesn't change much, the loss of consumer surplus when the price goes up is much less than if it's a very elastic, because with the elastic you've got all this too. So if it's very elastic, there's going to be more of a loss of consumer surplus if the price goes up. That's important to recognise, because we want to see the impact of a price change on consumer surplus, and it depends on these two things: the extent of the price change, obviously, and then less obviously the price elasticity of demand. If the demand is more elastic, you will see more of a loss of consumer surplus with an increase in price. So it depends on those factors. Now, the other side of the coin is the producer surplus. Here we can see the producer surplus is the difference between the price a producer is willing to accept and what is actually paid. So we can see, for example, if that's the price, yes, we can see the producer is willing to accept all these prices too, up to that point there. So that, all this is the surplus. For example, again, with a car, so if I'm a supplier of cars and my minimum is 20,000, and someone comes along and I manage to get 30,000, that's my surplus. So I've managed to get another 10,000 than my expectations. So that's the benefit to the supplier, to the producer. Now, if we put these, first of all, again, the impact of the price change on producer surplus depends on the extent of the price change, of course, but also the elasticity of supply. Again, if supply is very inelastic, any change in supply will produce less of a change in producer surplus. And if it's very elastic, you've got all this area that's extra, it will produce more of of a change in producer surplus with a change in price, if it's more elastic. Okay, so that's the two influences on the price change, on producer surplus. Now, what we've got this, this is a market, and we've got the producer surplus here, no, the consumer surplus here, A, E and P, and here we've got P, E and B is the producer surplus. Taken together, so if we've got all these together, A, E and B, that is the net benefit to society. So it's these added up. The consumer surplus with the producer surplus is the net benefit to society, or some economists call it welfare. That's what we gain with a free market interaction. Through the free market transaction, we gain this. This is what we gain. Now, this is very important, especially if we look at an intervention into the free market. For example, if the government decides to tax a product, and it goes from this price, this is the price, and they tax the product, and for this the producer accepts a lower part, so he's going to accept that he takes some of the hit, and also increases the price slightly for the consumer. So this is the tax revenue. Now, if we look at, so that goes directly to the tax man. This is the new price of the product, and the consumer surplus has shrunk. So the net benefit to society, and also the producer surplus has shrunk, has become, and the net benefit to society has become smaller, and this part here is called deadweight loss, because in that part there's no benefit to anyone. That's what we've lost. We've got some benefit taken out for the tax man, so part of the consumer surplus and the producer surplus has gone to the tax man, but there's a part of this transaction that nobody benefits from, and that's called deadweight loss. And that's one of the reasons why, obviously, the free market is the most efficient way to trade. Now, yes, we can see also here how with the new price, the new equilibrium point will be here, because the supplier will be willing and prepared to sell at all these prices for all these quantities. So that the supply curve obviously moves that way.